Alright everyone, the first wave of astroturfing over Kamala Harris's economic plan appears not to have worked very well, because now she's getting dragged by the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, CNN, I think MSNBC and like Vox and Salon are the only places that aren't dragging her economic proposals. Link in the description. Not archived, of course, just a Twitter post, an X post. Price gouging my ass. That has nothing to do with what Kamala is trying to tackle. There is no price gouging. What's happened is Bidenflation. She was part of the Biden administration. She was in tune to, generally speaking, as VP, she doesn't have as much power as the president, of course, but she was part and parcel and party to the economic policies that were being made, like the infrastructure bill, so-called, etc., which was basically the Solyndra on steroids bill, more than anything else. We'll see how that infrastructure pans out in the end. Probably not too well. That won't become evident for another decade or so, though. It'll be very, very interesting. Again, take the link in the description and see it for yourself. When even CNN, and they literally coordinate with the Biden administration, when even legacy media outlets that you directly coordinate with, for economic news explicitly, this was talked about by Darcy and others several years ago, when even they're saying, well, the economic proposal here seems a little bit off, there's something wrong. Well, then there's definitely something wrong. And they're understating it, of course. It's not just a little bit wrong. It's more like, balls to the wall, this is going to collapse the economy wrong. Kamala's economic proposals are as follows. Number one, an expanded child tax credit. I agree with this, by the way. But it was already proposed by the Trump administration, and you're trying to water it down and hoodwink people by front-ending $6,000 for the first year of your child's life, knowing full well that when the legacy media covers it, they'll mention that first. Well, of course, it's a lie by structure. There's a reason that they're doing that. They're still trying to circle wagons a little, but they're getting a little bit nervous, I think, in the legacy media at the moment. Second proposal, $25,000 for first-time home buyers. Sounds great, till you realize that a lot of people that take advantage of that will then default on their home loans, so then they lose their home and you have a bunch of vacant properties. It will lead to a housing bubble. And secondly, that homeowners, if they're selling their homes, say, well, they're going to get 25 grand extra. I'll raise the price by 25 grand. I'll gladly take that money. You're effectively giving money to people who are in an upper middle class position at the moment. I don't think that this is quite registered with elements of the legacy media quite yet. Third proposal, middle class tax cuts. Sounds good on paper. See, the problem is you're going to let the Trump tax cuts lapse, which means that you're basically just restoring the Trump middle class tax cuts. You're literally doing nothing more. Kamala at this point is the official homework copying presidential candidate. She's basically trying to take the successful policies of Trump and make them her own by pretending that they weren't imposed in the first place. We've already got broad middle-class tax cuts. Those will lapse if Trump is not reelected. If he's reelected, the Republicans in Congress and some of the Democrats, I'm sure, will side with kicking the can down the road. All of the policies that she has suggested here are either complete bullshit or are reasonably good ideas, but they're already in effect, or they've been copied from the other campaign. And she's getting dragged for it. And by dragged, I mean, like, fucked. And I love to see it. This is not the only article that you will see dragging Kamala Harris for those policy proposals. And that's because you've got one part socialism, which nobody wants, although you're not branding it as that, and then one part literally stealing other people's ideas. It's like Kamala Harris said, well, it's like not her, but her advisors and staff. They looked at Trump's mainline policies, the basic proposals, and they said, okay, we've done polling, and these are popular proposals. And then they said, well, you should add them to your campaign, but you can't make it too obvious. You know, you got to confuse the proles out there, the little people, the little minds of society. That's the way that they think about the average Joe public. So you're simply going to give it a different name. You'll shift it around a little bit, and then you can make it your own. This was done by the Biden administration in a very disastrous manner. The Afghanistan withdrawal. I've tried to explain probably a dozen times at this point. Donald Trump brokered the withdrawal deal. It involved the Taliban, it involved the government of Afghanistan, and it involved tribal leaders. What I tried to explain when Joe Biden decided, well, come on, man, we're going to stay for an extra month, or whatever it was, said that's a terrible idea. You've agreed to something, shaken hands, signed the papers, inked and stamped and witnessed and everything else. You've created a deal. And unfortunately for you, under the customs of the culture that happens to be predominant in Afghanistan, if you go back on an agreement in any way, shape, or form, you don't follow through, it's considered disrespectful. And then you get fucked. Now, if you're a little person, you just get your hand chopped off, perhaps. If you're the U.S. military, you get overrun by not just Taliban, but tribal warlords. Tried to explain this. The agreement didn't go through. The Biden administration effectively attempted to appropriate the withdrawal, which was popular. The idea of withdrawing, we all knew that we had to withdraw, but they decided to move the date in order to say, well, I'm the one that brokered this, man. I'm the one that brokered the deal. That's why it failed. It's this kind of political narcissism that is the problem. Kamalaharris is doing the same thing. She learned from Biden, who learned from Obama, who did the same thing, and it's almost dynastic. You can legit think of Kamalaharris, if she's elected, as the fourth term of Barack Obama. I mean, she'll be calling the shots. She's egotistical and narcissistic herself. Will she call good shots? No, I don't think so. Her economic agenda so far is getting dragged even by the liberal media. Do you realize how damning this is? Normally they'd circle wagons and they would say, well, Kamala's economic proposals may not be perfect, but here's a couple of highlights and we think that the public would really like them. Or something like that. They've done this for Biden on a number of occasions, you know, with inflation and shit like that. They're still trying to claim that inflation is falling. I find it funny how mathematically illiterate some pollsters actually are. I think the general public's probably more aware than you think. Yes, of course, the schools have watered down the mathematical curriculum. That doesn't mean the average person doesn't understand that 2 plus 2 does not actually equal 5 like you keep telling them. With Harris being dragged at this level, it's going to be a drag on her campaign. I think this is the first sort of shot across the bow moment, the first foreshock of what's to come. I still suspect that Trump will be reelected. I know that Merchan might jail him in September, supposedly. I would declare that Trump was the victor of the election if that does happen, by the way. I doubt it, though. I think it'll be a fine and community service or something. They'll make Trump go scrub graffiti. That would be hilarious, by the way. Oh, he'd use it as a photo op. There's really no way that they can win. The whole price gouging and price cap thing, though, is the centrally bad thing within her economic proposals. It is reminiscent of the Soviet Union. It's reminiscent of East Germany. It's reminiscent of the same kind of policies that we vigorously opposed for 4 decades. We don't need that in the United States. It's not necessary. You don't need price caps. You need to control inflation. The problem is that, do you really think that Kamala is, number one, interested in, and number two, capable of, controlling inflation? No. I mean, the administration she was part of, she gleefully talked about the Infrastructure Act and all that other stuff, which caused the inflation, actually. I like how the Inflation Reduction Act, which meant absolutely nothing, was passed concurrent to when inflation was already starting to fall. I think that that's something that they're also going to try to take credit for. By the way, where is Biden? Where is the President of the United States? Haven't heard from him lately. I mean, he's uttered a few things on the phone, and other than that, we've got nothing. It's like radio silence. I want proof of life. That's about all. Peace out.